restart again. So I was talking about the physically uncontrollable function is nothing but this is the fingerprint of integrated circuit. And now the question is how we authenticate any IC with the help of this puff. So let us try to understand the working of this physically uncontrollable function. Let us assume I have an IC and I'm considering this IC is authentic one. Okay, so whatever the authentic IC it has, there may be some one additional module need to be added in that IC, and that additional module we call it the physically uncontrollable function. And this physically uncontrollable function is nothing but this is used to authenticate that IC. Now the question is how this puff works and how we authenticate whether this IC is correct one or this is the fake one. Okay. So for that purpose, how this puff works, there are some challenge response pairs. So challenge is nothing but some input patterns which we are providing, and accordingly the puff will provide the responses. Okay. So puff is nothing but, see, for any different puff, the challenge may be same, but the response will be different because each puff will work differently because they are using the process variability of devices. And you cannot say the process variability of devices are unique for all the devices. So for all the ICs, this puff will give you the different kind of responses for the even the challenges are same. So suppose if I'm talking about the IC1, first IC, and if I'm providing some challenge, so it will give you some kind of responses. Okay. And for, let me repeat it again, for each puff, the challenge and the response pair will be unique. And if the challenge pair and response pair is unique, what does it means? If you know the challenge response pair for any IC, you need to compare it and you can check whether I have received the authentic IC or not. Okay, so let us assume for each authentic IC, there is a record of challenge and responses. So suppose I have some challenges and accordingly I have received some responses. So while validating, what I will check, I will provide the same set of challenges, and if the same response I am receiving, then I can say I have the valid IC. The IC is valid one. So this is the database for any IC. So suppose if I have IC and I have transferred it through the untrusted supply chain, might be some third party can have added like unauthorized ICs, unauthentic IC, fake IC. So I need to check before I try to use my IC, I need to test whether I have received the authentic IC or not. Because in some applications like defense applications, you don't want to use untrusted IC. You want to use a trusted one, authentic one. So if your IC is not authentic, might be some information, secret information can be leaked if the application is very sensitive like defense one. Okay, so you need to validate whether I have received the trusted IC or not. Okay, so the puff response pair will give you the one of the way how you can validate your IC. So because you already know the database for any IC, and that database is in the form of challenge and response, where you have some challenge, some responses. So what I will do, once I have received the IC through untrusted supply chain or through untrusted environments, then I need to validate whether this IC is authentic or not. So for that purpose, what I will do, I will apply same set of challenges to the IC which I have received. And because if it is trusted, I must receive the same set of responses. Because I'm providing the same challenge, I should receive the same responses. So if both the responses are same, I can say I have received the trusted IC. Okay, so whatever response I'm getting at the second IC which I'm trying to test the trustness, so I will compare these two responses from the authentic one which we have the database and the second one which I just wanted to test it. And if both the responses are same, you can say the IC is authentic one. So this is the simplest way how you can test the authenticity of your chip with the help of this physically uncontrollable function. For your information, because before I start discussing any security kind of things, the reliability is really very important. So because the talk that may need 2-hour talk, 1 hour for reliability and the second hour for security. But because this talk is basically focused on the security side, I'm not considering the reliability, but to understand this one, how we are getting different kind of responses based on the different challenges. The simple physics behind this is the process variability. While fabricating any chip, whatever the devices you want to make, even though the sizes, even though all the physical parameters of all the transistors are same, it is not possible to manufacture, to fabricate each device is identical enough. There may be some process variability, and this process variability is a problem, especially if you're talking about the reliability one. But this process variability give you some benefit, some advantage to create the different challenge response pair. So in simple word, the researchers who are listening, they may understand, if your device, if you want to make any circuit, and if that circuit is not reliable, so don't worry, you just use it for the puff designing, and that puff designing will give you the different set of challenge and response pair, and you will get on the security side. So if your system is not reliable, you can use it for the security and the vice versa. So suppose if your system is reliable enough, so there is no problem. But if it is not reliable, you can use it for the authenticity, for authentication purpose or for security purpose. So in VLSI industry, reliability and security, these two are really very important thing, and people are considering either reliability or security. Both things cannot be considered at the same time or with the single circuit. So if your system is reliable, you don't need security. But if your system is not reliable, you need security, and that unreliability can be utilized to make your system secure with the help of this puff authentication. Okay, so this is one of the primitive that we call it the physically unclonable function. Similarly, I just told you, suppose even though if I am providing the same set of challenges, and if I have a different ICs, so the puff will be different because that puff works on the process variability. So based on that, I will receive different kind of responses, and all these responses are not same. Okay, so for each IC, you will get different responses, different key, and this becomes the fingerprint of that IC. Okay, so if the challenge and response pairs are matching, then we can say it is authentic one. And if it is not matching, whatever the challenge pair and response pair you have, if it is not matching, in that case, you can say it is the counterfeiting IC. Okay, so this is the important thing. Second thing is like the true random number generator. Hope I have some 5-minute time to finish it. Okay, so let me finish in the next 5 minutes. So because the next thing is the cryptography and the TRNG. I just told you, for if you want to encrypt your data, you need one encryption. And for that purpose, what you need, let us assume I have this data. This is what, this is the plain text which you want to encrypt. Okay, and because to secure information, you need to encrypt it, right? And for encryption, you need some secret key. Okay, so this secret key and this plain text will be merged, and they will generate one text that we call it the cipher text, and this process we call it the encryption. Okay, and the question is how we are generating this secret key or this one. So for that purpose, what we are using true random number generator, and this true random number generator is used to generate the secret key. And now the question is how we are generating this true random number. Simply like the entropy sources or noises. If any noise is present in the system, that noise can give you some random kind of responses, and if the random response we are receiving, that random responses will generate some random bit string, and that random bit string will act as a secret key, random key for the encryption. Because if the key is not predictable, if the key is random, in that sense, you can say the encryption will be good. Okay, so for better encryption, the key must be random. And if noise is random, like whatever the noise signal or entropy sources which we have, these are noisy. In that sense, you can generate complete random key. And if you can generate complete random key, the encryption will be perfect one. And the ciphertext, whatever you are generating out of this encryption, will be secure enough. Okay, so once you receive this ciphertext, that will be transferred to the receiver, and because the same secret key will be used by sender and the receiver, so they can decrypt the information at the receiving end, that can be decrypted with the help of opposite process than encryption, and then you can receive the plain text. Just take the example of your WhatsApp messages. Whatever message you are transferring, that is encrypted at your end with the help of secret key. There are some algorithms to do that, and that text is ciphertext is transmitted, because the ciphertext will not be predictable. The third person who don't have the secret key cannot predict the information. Okay, so this is the simplest way for any cryptography purpose. And the one point of interest in this slide is the true random number generator, like where we can work on as a VLSI expert. We can generate this random key that can be utilized for the encryption purpose, and for that purpose we are using some noises, some randomness, some variability. So these kind of phenomena are utilized to generate the secret key with the help of true random number generator. So as a VLSI expert, we can consider working in this direction as well. So now the simple thing is, like if I have something like, if I have generated a secret key, how this encryption may work. So suppose if I have to encrypt some data, so suppose the ciphertext which we have generated here, that looks like this one, 2491, something like that one. And if we can see this one, this ciphertext cannot be predictable what information I have transferred. Okay, but let us consider one more. So if your if your secret key is completely random, perfectly random, in that case you will generate this kind of text. Okay, similarly, if your the secret key is not random, might be some of the keywords, some of the words may repeat after some time. So you can see two red parts in the text that are repeated after some period of time. So because these texts are repeated, the attacker can predict, okay, these words are repeating after some period of time, might be this is the secret key. Okay, so if they can predict this information, they can interpret the information, and they can attack on your devices. So the key takeaway from here is, whatever the encryption you are doing, whatever the cryptography process you are doing, your generated output or the ciphertext must be random enough so that the third person cannot attack on it, cannot predict the data. So this is really very important to generate a true random number generator. And as a VLSI expert, we need to come up with some mechanism. We need to utilize the randomness. We need to utilize the noises to generate this key, which is truly in random nature. Okay, so this is really very important. And this is the second topic of your interest that you can think of. Okay. Third one is, I just told you, once you have generated some secret key, that secret key is stored somewhere. So let us assume I'm storing that secret key in some memory. I'm not going to discuss in more detail, because this is the input text, whatever you have. This is the secret key which we have stored in some memory block. And this is the encryption purpose. And here I will get the ciphertext, which I have already discussed in the previous slide. Okay. So I'm just talking about, suppose if I have generated some secret key and I want to store in some memory. Okay. So because memory can store the data either in terms of logic 0 or logic 1. The bit streams are 0 and 1 only. So if I have a memory, and if that memory is storing logic 0, might be it can dissipate different power than while storing logic 1. If there is a mismatch in power dissipation for storing logic 0 and for storing logic 1, the attacker can predict, okay, if I am storing logic 0, let us assume the power dissipation is 1 picowatt, and for storing logic 1, let us assume the power dissipation is 1.5 picowatt. So based on these combinations, attacker can predict, okay, higher power dissipation means logic high. So based on that, they can predict the information. So this is also one kind of threat where I need to make my memory secure enough. So to make that one, the simplest thing is I need to, the power dissipation while storing logic 0 or storing logic 1, I need to make equal power dissipation. If I have equal power dissipation while storing both the data, then the attacker cannot predict what information it has stored, because it is dissipating equal amount of power while receiving, while storing logic 0 and 1 both. So this is one of the way, one direction where you can think of how you can equate the power dissipation in both the states for a memory, just like a static random access memory or SRAM, so that you can say the data cannot be hacked from the memory. Data information cannot be extracted from the memory. So this kind of phenomena, we call it the side channel attack resilient memory. Okay, so this is one of the way that you can think of how you can design your memory. As for simplicity, let me give you the brief example. Let us assume I have considered one memory and the power distribution for logic. Yeah, so here you can see the two histogram for logic 0 and logic 1. For logic 0, the histogram is somewhere here. Logic 1 histogram is somewhere here, and logic 1, the histogram is somewhere here. So because the distribution is near about this one for logic 0 and distribution is about this one for logic 1, and they are completely different, if you can see here. And if attacker can see, okay, I'm getting this much of distribution, this much of power distribution, current distribution, so they can say, okay, the data which they have stored is logic 0, and similarly for 1. So what our objective is, let us try to think in some way I can superimpose this distribution to this one for both the logics, and by doing so, attacker cannot predict. So we need to come up with some mechanism, and if it is overlap with each other, distribution for logic 0 and distribution for logic 1 is superimposed on each other, so attacker cannot predict what kind of distribution it is. It is for logic 0 or it is for logic 1. Okay, so by this is the simplest mechanism to make your system resilient to leakage power, and successfully you can store your data without extracted, like the third person cannot extract the information from outside. So this is important thing that you should consider. So this is what we call it, the leakage power attack resilient memory. So I think these are some other things that, because we have the limited time, so I will close my session here. I came here to with some few more slides, but because of time limitation, I need to close it here only. So if you have any questions, you can ask the questions.
Yes.
So if you have any questions, because yeah, I'm skipping all these parts because it was we had limited time. So because hardware Trojan, counterfeiting, these are also some of the so let me quickly, I can discuss, like, because I just told you, like, the counterfeited IC, like counterfeiting means fake IC can be added at any point of time, at the design time or at the fabrication time, during assembly, during distribution, or to predict a lifetime or end of the cycle. So there are various steps where the counterfeited IC can be added in the supply chain, and that can create the problem. For that purpose, you must need some authentication purpose, like a physically unclonable function. So this is one of the way. Just like how the IC recycling process works. So what they do, because suppose if I have a computer, and that after 2 or 3 years, let us assume that computer is stopped working due to one IC or two, but in whole motherboard, there could be more than 20 ICs. So out of those 20 IC, only 2 are defective, rest 18 are working perfectly fine. So what people do, they used to recycle those IC, they used to add, they used to reprocess it, and they used to add into the original supply chain. Okay, so this is what the people are doing nowadays, and this is what one kind of security threat. If those ICs has been added into the let us assume military applications, so that can create problem. So we need to understand how we can check the authenticity of that IC before we are using it. Just buy from market and start using it is not the solution. You need to check it whether we have received the correct IC, new IC or not, and that is really very important. So let us assume I am the end user, how this counterfeited process works. So let me quickly finish this part as well. So suppose I am the end user, and after some time some of the component has been broken and I'm not using that system, so I have thrown it in the e-waste, and some company, they may have processed that e-waste and they have picked some correct ICs which are working, and then again they can add into the global supply chain, and that can be used, and then again it can come to us as a fresh device, which is not correct one. So this must be tested well before. Okay. And similarly, hardware Trojan is nothing but this is insertions of some module while designing without the knowledge of the user. So this kind of things, we call it the hardware Trojan, and this is also one kind of security threat, especially in the hardware side. Yeah, so as of now, this is what the lab infrastructure and the support which we have at IIT Jammu. So with this note, I just wanted to close this session. Thank you so much. You can ask the question if you have anything on related to the hardware security. Yeah, it was very quick. I just wanted to make this session for at least 1.5 hours, but due to time constraint, I need to finish in 35 minutes. Thank you.
So, thank you, Ambika sir. Is there anyone who have some doubt or any query? Sir, I have a question for this.
Yeah, please.
Sir, for hardware security, we require some additional hardware to the existing hardware for the security?
No. While designing your, let us assume I want to design any chip and I want to make it secure enough. So while designing, I need to add additional module PUF in that IC only. So you don't need additional hardware that need to be interfaced. PUF is the integral part of that IC only. So while designing, let us assume I want to design a processor where I need some control modules, some arithmetical modules, some register and other things. Other than these things, I need to add one more module that we call it the PUF, and we need to fabricate it. And that PUF help us to integrate, just like you need additional thumb to validate your identity. Similarly, PUF is the integral part of that IC only, and that is especially used to authenticate that one.
Thank you, sir. So this additional security also increase the power dissipation?
Yes, little bit, but the important thing is this additional module is only used when we want to authenticate it. So this is not in operation all the time. Okay, so it is 1 time or 2 time usable. So and then after it will be in the sleep mode only. So in sleep mode, power dissipation will be released. So the overall power dissipation, there is no power dissipation penalty. So because see, suppose if I want to use